Hello and welcome along to another episode of Review the 92 with me, Daniel. I'm back with Tom as always, and we're back for the middle of our triple header from the start of December. We came up for Blackpool v Luton on the Saturday, or I came up to visit you guys for that. And then on Sunday, we had Salford versus Chesterfield in the FA Cup, EFL v non-league. We did get to see I think I'd call it a surprise rather than a shock, as Chesterfield ran out winners. But it also meant for me, I got a first visit to Moor Lane, or now the Peninsula Stadium, for sponsorship reasons. You got your second visit there, so we'll be able to compare for your occasions. But let's talk about the stats quickly before we go on to the four key areas, which of course, atmosphere, location, value for money and character. The ground itself, a bit hard to judge this one because obviously it's had significant renovation in recent years, but officially Salford moved in there in 1978. At that point, it was a 1,600 capacity ground. They were obviously in the lower echelons of non-league for a long period of time before the famous class of 92 takeover and the pumped-in investment. But they are now an EFL side. The ground has been increased to a capacity of 5,108, including 2,246 seats. And the record attendance at the ground is 4,518, which you may remember just a couple of years ago was against Leeds in the EFL Cup first round.
I was there.
You was there. That was your first visit to the ground. So I'm looking forward to that, actually, because this one was on TV on a Sunday evening for ITV4, which is going to probably make up a couple of comments later on in the episode. But as a part of that, it meant the capacity, or the attendance, was a little bit reduced in the home ends, and it was at home to a team in a lower division, which is a mitigating circumstance. So for you, I'm looking forward to getting a perspective of where the ground was full as well to hopefully factor in. But let's start by having a quick overview of the ground before we crack on with the four areas. Your thoughts on the Salford City Stadium? Obviously very convenient for you. It's local to your soon-to-be in-laws house, just a walk away. But what did you think of the ground, having visited on two occasions?
I think it's a smart little ground. The stands are all even, aren't they? They go together nicely. It's been well done. It's modern inside, pretty nondescript in some ways, I guess you could say. It just has quite a temporary feel to it.
Yeah.
Just in general, just overall, even the outside, even the bathrooms, the toilets, the bar, everything around it, it just feels new, and you're reminded of the fact that Salford have kind of come from quite low down the pyramid very quickly and have arrived thanks to what we all know why where they are. No need to go over that, but yeah, if I just to describe it in one word, would be temporary, I think.
Yeah, and actually, it's a very good point you make, and I was going to bring it up. It's not often we say sensible consumer things on here, rather than just being self-indulged in our experience on the day, as per the Blackpool weather one in the last episode. But going back to that subject, we were lucky that the day after, the weathers had calmed a little in the north of England, and it wasn't too bad an evening. It's quite pleasant in the end, albeit a little bit cold. But that temporary feel, when you were in the stand, or certainly the stand that we were in, where the tunnel was and all of that, to get to toilets, to get to the bar, to get to the food and refreshment stand, you had to go back outside in terms of round the outside and behind the stand, which if it had been a cold, rainy, if it had been like at Blackpool the day before, I would imagine, particularly for people who are maybe a bit frailer, a little bit older, it would have been a pretty unpleasant experience. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, and it didn't make a whole lot of sense because we were sat in line with the corner flag, and it was just that they weren't willing to let us go to the most convenient bar or nearest bar to where we were sat. And they could have easily done that, I think. I don't think there was a big enough crowd to warrant making us do the whole walk around the ground. I don't think it was well organised, to be honest. No.
Well, I'm just wondering, and I don't know whether we're going to be factoring that in. And obviously you went to an EFL Cup tie that I think was on TV as well. But that ground, because we had the TV cameras, the ITV4 presentation literally right in front of us by that corner flag, where I'm going to get to it later, but pretending that they were out there the whole time and then running into a studio as soon as the game kicks off and getting tea and hot water bottles delivered. But that seemed to be the reason, because of all the electrical equipment and that we couldn't then go through what would have been a very quick route to all of the refreshments and bars and that. So I do think that might be a one-off that we just happened to encounter that day.
They didn't want us peasants mixing with the stars, did they?
No. And Kevin Davis was there, so they're absolutely right to say that. But look, let's move on to atmosphere. I'm going to need your help on this one because the atmosphere from the home end was very poor on that occasion. There's no other way of dressing it up. There were about 1,000 home fans. There were almost as many away fans. The away atmosphere, fantastic, and their performance merited it in the end. They deservedly won the game and obviously got their big reward against Chelsea afterwards away from home. But you went to a game where it was completely full. So I'm relying on you to tell me that experience with the record attendance, because I think that might be the first time one of us has been present at the record attendance game. What was that one like by comparison?
Obviously, it was Leeds United coming to Salford, and Salford are like Manchester United's little cousin.
Yes.
So I think at both games I've been to at Salford, you see a couple of United shirts in the crowd. I think a lot of people would admit Man United is their team, and probably for price reasons or convenience, they'll go to Salford games as well.
Yeah.
Which fair enough. But everyone knows United fans hate Leeds. Leeds always travel in great numbers. So Leeds obviously sold out their end behind the goal, and I was behind the other goal, which I guess is the part where the more vocal Salford fans congregate. And I'd say the atmosphere was good because they were basically just showing all game their hatred to Leeds. So a lot of anti-Leeds chants, and they were in good voice. And it's probably the biggest game the ground's ever held, and the attendance just backs that up. So yeah, on that occasion, I would say the atmosphere was good. But you'd hope when it's almost, for want of a better phrase, your cup final, you basically expect it to be a good atmosphere. So hard to say because, as I say, it almost felt like it was Manchester United against Leeds more than Salford fans singing about their own club. I don't know how to weigh that up, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think just the other bit to factor into that is probably I don't know if I'm being disparaging here or maybe unfair, but looking at the average attendances, and I know the Sunday night is a mitigating factor. I think United were at home a couple of hours earlier on TV, which probably didn't help either that day. But the attendance, the atmosphere, I think is probably more likely to be similar to what we saw against Chesterfield than perhaps what you would have seen against Leeds. So I've only got one experience to rank it, so I'll let you go first on this one because I'm guessing you're probably going to go somewhere in the middle.
Oh, see, the most recent game, the one we actually went to together, there was perhaps a bit of noise going behind the goal, but the two longest stands where we were was sparsely populated, and I don't know if I heard anyone even speak. Where do I go with this?
And let's be fair, Salford were pretty awful at home to a non-league team, which isn't going to help the atmosphere on a good day.
But we're not just doing home support. And the Chesterfield fans deserve credit. They were in fine voice the whole game, relentless, urging their team on. So, yeah, I can't say it was a pathetic atmosphere. I don't think the home fans were particularly good, but in general, the atmosphere was strong. So I'll give it a 7, I think.
I mean, I think probably the fact that you went to the Leeds game might have just added the one on from what I'm going to give. I'm going to give it a 6 because the home atmosphere, what I will say is there were clearly, I know it's only a small group, but perhaps 150, 200 regulars that had been there for years that go to every game or whatever. And look, you could see them trying to encourage the team. And towards the end of the game, it became more disparaging groans. But there was clearly a bit of atmosphere from them. But the Chesterfield end, as you mentioned, was brilliant. And we're judging the game, not the home support. And we've given other grounds great scores. I think of Norwich, for an example, because the Luton end was bouncing the whole game. So we can't say just because it was the Chesterfield fans doing all the singing that is a poor atmosphere, because it wasn't. So I'm going to give it a 6. I think it was average, but it was because of the away support that it was decent. So I do want to put that bit in there too. In terms of location, now this is a very hard one for us to do because we walked, as I mentioned, from your to-be in-laws, which isn't a great deal of distance at all. It was incredibly convenient for us, possibly the most on the calendar, bar Bury, unfortunately, when that was there as well. So we have to look at it from a public transport point of view. I mean, even for me, getting up from Milton Keynes, it would be direct to Manchester and then a short bus down the road is certainly no trouble at all. It's very easy. It's very well linked. It's not actually in the heart of the Salford area itself. It's a bit closer to the likes of Heaton Park, Prestwich, etc. But it's very well linked and easy to get to. And there's a great tram network in Manchester as well.
Both times I've been to the ground, I've walked there and back. So it is hard for me to say what the experience would be like for the average away fan. But the street I walk from, where my in-laws to be, as you keep calling them, live, does have a tram stop at the end of their street. So even walking from there, if you got off there, it's not a trek.
No.
And I think there probably are even nearer tram stops. So yeah, you're in a big city, buses, good tram system. I don't think you're going to have too many issues getting to the ground. I'll have to be consistent, and I'll give it another 7, I think, for location.
Yeah, I think, look, it's been the same across the board. Even when we've done London clubs and things, it's when you're in a big city that's so well linked, it's impossible for it to be a bad experience. Going north, travelling for us from further south as well is actually a little bit easier and cheaper. So certainly no grumbles from my side of it. The only very slight negative I want to put on is when you get to the ground in terms of location, it's not very easily or well marked where to go in for a home or away fan. For me, going as a neutral, we ended up walking nearly the whole way around the ground. And I know there was a little bit of a blockage in one of the main entrances because of the TV cameras again, but it wasn't the easiest. And you end up walking down some quite suburban-ish streets to get towards the stadium. So I wouldn't say it was brilliantly marked out when you get to the ground, but location-wise, getting to within 2 minutes of it was fantastic. So I'll go one more and I'll give it an 8 because I thought, well, we went to 3 that weekend and that was the easiest. So 8 out of 10, simple as that. Let's move on to value for money. Now, for all of the maybe negative or indifferent press that has gone with the class of 92 takeover of Salford, one of the things that has to be a positive is their ticket pricing system, because it's incredibly fair. It is one of the cheapest in the EFL. Now, you could argue it's a smallish temporary field ground, and you could argue that maybe you would have expected to see reduced prices for a cup tie at home to a non-league team on a Sunday afternoon on television, which for this specific game probably means the value for money isn't great, because it was the standard league price, which for adults is £15. Now, I don't think you're going to get EFL football on a regular match day for much less than that. I think that's a fantastic price. I mean, to give you a bit of a comparison for that, I know I'm down south, but some of my local National League and National League North and South teams charge more than that. So Salford have kept their pricing low. The only possible grumble is that a home to a National League team on a Sunday night on telly, could they have reduced their normal price? But their normal prices are bloody fantastic.
Yeah, I just don't see how you can really complain at seeing a professional football match for £15, to be honest. If that is the league price, is it exactly the same?
Yeah, it was the league price. 15 for adults, 10 for kids, and 10 for concessions, and 5 for young kids.
Yeah, like you say, they get some bad press, and probably rightly so. But if that's the one good thing, then it sure is. It is a good thing. That's a really competitive ticket price, and fair play for that. Let's go high. How high is it? 8 or 9? I've not given a 9, so in a while. Let's give it a 9, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm almost tempted to give it a 10. The only reason I'm not is because the specific game we went to, maybe you would have expected it to be reduced slightly. So for the game we went to, it was probably an 8 or a 9. But if it was just being judged on league games and we were, say, still in League 2 with Luton going, I would probably have given it a 10. But I think 9's fair. And look, fair play. We can't just throw all the negatives at the ownership and what we think is right and wrong in terms of wages and development and the way they go about things, and not highlight the positives. And that is an incredibly big one, because that's the EFL football for a great price. So well done on that front. Finally, though, is character. Now, it's going to go against the word you said very early on, which was temporary. It feels temporary. So that would suggest that with renovation, it feeling temporary, all of the stuff basically being pop-up outside the stands, I can't imagine this is going to get a good score for character, is it?
No, I don't really see how I can make a case for having great character.
It's not a bowl.
It's not, but can't think of a ground that I can compare it to, because it's not a bowl, but then they're not, because of how new it is, they're not football stands as we know football stands to be. they're very small. It's just one tier, isn't it? It's just, and not even that many rows.
Well, you've sort of got where behind the goals, it's still sort of the classic non-league terraces, isn't it? And then like the stands we were in either side of the tunnel, they've been modernised with the seating requirements for the EFL, but you've still got a bit like the temporary stand at Blackpool in the last episode. You've got the corrugated iron foot under you. But yeah, it's a real mix of non-league behind the goals and then the modern meeting requirements either side of the pitch, isn't it?
Yeah, and to be fair, I was on that terrace, as I said before, in the Leeds game. So yeah, maybe I'm being overly critical because I do like a terrace behind the goal. So that's a redeeming feature. But the longer the two stands along the sides of the pitch, then yeah, they're quite unusual. And I don't think I've really seen a stand that compares to them in the 37 other grounds I've been to in the country currently. So, and I said in the last episode about Blackpool that there's flags up around the ground that pays tribute to the supporters groups I've got around the country.
Yeah, I don't remember anything like that.
I don't want to knock them on their size, but I doubt Salford has that because of where they've been in a lowly position for so long. So perhaps why would they have supporters groups outside of the very close area? I'm rambling here and trying to think of things that point towards a decent.
I've got one redeeming feature.
Lie to me, go on.
The floodlights are shaped as the badge. It's the only thing I noticed when I was there, and I had to check it up when I got back. But yes, the badge shape for Salford City, the floodlights match that, which is a unique feature because every ground you go to, they're either just along the stand or a little square.
Is that a diamond?
I don't know my shapes very well anymore from school. I'm thinking closer to rhomboid, but I don't know off the top of my head.
No, there's a word I've not heard for a good 12 years.
It is a rhombus, actually, isn't it? So I might have even got that wrong. But yeah, something along.
I wasn't gonna say it. I was keeping it safe with diamond. I'd let you make a fool of yourself. Rhombus.
But it is a unique feature, which is, to be honest, it's the only one I can think of because the rest of it, you're just walking around streets and then going in. But
so one thing I did like about the ground is you're very close to the pitch, and you actually, to get to our seats, we walked right along it, and you get. Well, we had one of our group
by the tunnel.
One of our group went to get a burger at half time and was delayed getting back because they got the tunnels out to let the players come back out. So
and it goes across the walkway, doesn't it?
It crosses the walkway. At full time, the little kids were asking for players' shirts or like high fives as they were coming off the pitch. You get very close. You feel part of it. I think we walked behind the dugouts, did we? So that's what I like about, I guess, lower league.
That was the non-league feel, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's. They didn't feel detached. Like you had no place being anywhere near the footballers, and they're on a different level to you. Yeah, it was nice that you could get close to them, as I say, especially for the little kids that were at the game. So that's definitely a big positive that's got going for it, I guess.
And it's still not going to get a great score, is it?
Oh no, but it might add one to its score. I'll give it a 5 for character, I think.
I'll be honest with you. I feel that we're being slightly generous here, but it's a Saturday evening. It's a nice, warm, cozy one. I'm feeling good. So 5, I will match you on. I have got to say that you mentioned my favourite bit. Obviously, with all the COVID postponements over the festive period, I did go to quite a few non-league games, and that is the best bit. The fact that you can be blocked off by the tunnel, that you can walk a metre away from the pitch, the fact that you're in those little old concrete steps, the same ones that the players are walking down at the end of the game. That has got that, it's still got that non-league touch to it, which I fear, unfortunately, as they were talking about at the game, it's probably not going to be long before they move ground and we see something that is a bit more detached from the non-league, close to the pitch vibe we've got. But for now, it still had it. So for that reason, it will get a 5. There were no standout characteristics of the stands, of the ground. There were no monuments because there's not obviously that big professional history behind them, those big elite competitions, those big, look, like we mentioned at Millwall, look at all of these photos of great things that have happened in the past. That isn't there with Salford because they've been a community non-league club until very recently. So that bit was perhaps missing, but a few nice little touches. And for a ground that has that temporary short-term feel, it could have been a lot worse.
I mentioned before how we didn't have access to the bar that's behind the stand with a goal. And I know that they stock a local craft brewery, I think, and I don't know if that's trying to support local business. I do like the fact if they've maintained that, trying to keep a link to the local community, stocking products made by local businesses, then that's another thing that the ownership should be applauded for. But unfortunately, on the day, we didn't get to enjoy any of that. Again, because it was a big occasion and there were TV cameras all over the place and special people. So we were told to make our way right around and go to the generic bar.
Absolutely. The only thing we got was a close-up of the legend that is Kevin Davis. So that's enough for me. But our overall scores will be down below. Let us know what you think if you've been to the Peninsula, Moor Lane, whatever you want to call it. And I'm really interested. Let me know if you've been when Salford were a non-league club before the takeover, because I'd be interested to see the comparison from the old sort of non-league vibe ground that it was previously. Of course, let us know in the comments what you thought, though, if you agree with our scores. If you did enjoy the episode, please do put a thumbs up on it. We've got the final of the triple header to come next, and it's going to be the one I enjoy the most because of the shirt Tom's got in the background, but we'll leave that for another day. Please do subscribe down below. We'll see you again soon. Thank you to Tom for joining me, and see you next time.